Targets here is Jordan. The ball up. Michael Jordan on the breakaway, and Hardaway had...
Did you know that one of the most iconic trash talk moments in NBA history ended with one of the coldest posters ever? It all started as a joke, just lighthearted words before the cameras, but with Michael Jordan, jokes had consequences. In the 1997 All-Star Game, Dikembe Mutombo leaned in with a smile and told Jordan he had never dunked on him. The crowd laughed, the players laughed, and even Jordan cracked a smile. But behind that laugh, there was something brewing. Because Michael Jordan was not the type of man you poked, not the kind of competitor you teased. When you gave him a challenge, he didn't forget it. He stored it like fuel until the moment came to unleash it. And Mutombo, one of the greatest shot blockers of all time, was about to learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. At that point in his career, Jordan was already the greatest. He had 4 championships, 9 scoring titles, and his name was etched into every conversation about the best to ever play. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone, but Mutombo's words triggered something deeper, not about legacy, but about pride. Mutombo was 7'2", with arms that seemed endless, a 4-time All-Star, and one of the most feared defenders in the league. His finger wag after every block was legendary, a taunt that humiliated opponents every night. For years, he had turned away shots from stars across the league, and Jordan was never able to put him on a poster. That fact gave Mutombo confidence, maybe even arrogance, and it led to the moment where he poked the bear. Jordan heard those words, smiled, and promised, one day. That day came sooner than anyone expected. The 1997 Eastern Conference semifinals set the stage. The Chicago Bulls, fresh off a record-setting season, were chasing another championship. The Atlanta Hawks, balanced and confident, had put together a team capable of competing with anyone. They had Steve Smith scoring from the perimeter, Mookie Blaylock running the floor, Christian Leitner stretching defenses, and Mutombo controlling the paint. Their defense was brutal, their teamwork tight, and their big man gave them the backbone. When the Hawks stole Game 2 at home, it looked like maybe they could make the series interesting. But for Jordan, the series wasn't just about wins. It was about answering that laugh from the All-Star Game. Game 5, May 13, 1997. The Bulls led the series 3-1, and Chicago's United Center was buzzing with the expectation of a closeout. The Bulls had the swagger of champions, a team that knew how to crush opponents when it mattered. From the opening tip, the pace was intense. Jason Caffey fed Jordan for the first bucket, and soon Scottie Pippen brought the house down with a slam on the fast break. Chicago's energy was high, the crowd electric, but the real highlight was yet to come. Mutombo was waiting in the paint, ready to do what he always did: deny, block, and wag his finger. But on one possession, Jordan decided it was time to end the conversation once and for all. It happened quickly, almost too quickly to process. After a give and go with Luke Longley, Jordan caught the ball back, drove hard into the lane, and elevated straight at Mutombo. For years, players had backed down or pulled up when they saw that long frame under the rim. Not Jordan. He exploded, rose higher, and slammed the ball right over Mutombo's outstretched arms. The arena erupted like an earthquake. The crowd lost their minds, the bench jumped like children at recess, and cameras captured what instantly became a piece of basketball history. And to put salt on the wound, Jordan looked right at Mutombo and wagged his finger, mimicking the very move Mutombo had made famous. It was disrespectful, it was ruthless, and it was pure Michael Jordan. That dunk was more than 2 points. It was a message. For years, Georgetown big men had tried to stop Jordan. Patrick Ewing, Alonzo Mourning, and now Mutombo. All of them had been posterized. All of them had been conquered. At 34 years old, when most players were declining, Jordan was still taking on the biggest defenders in the world and making them part of his personal highlight reel. That play summed up who he was: fearless, relentless, and hungry even when he had nothing left to prove. The rest of the game was just Chicago dominance. Jordan wasn't satisfied with the dunk. He orchestrated the offense, hit his mid-range jumpers with surgical precision, and set up his teammates with passes that made the Hawks look helpless. Dennis Rodman, of all people, stepped outside and drained threes like he was a shooting guard. Steve Kerr knocked down daggers from the wing, and the Bulls played with the looseness of a team that knew they couldn't be touched. Meanwhile, Jordan kept piling on, hitting fadeaways, creating space with jab steps, and reminding Steve Smith and Mookie Blaylock that guarding him was a hopeless task. Every time Atlanta tried to claw back, Chicago responded with another highlight. By halftime, the game was already slipping away, and by the third quarter, it was a blowout. Jordan had 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists, but the numbers didn't even tell the story. The dunk had already decided the night. Mutombo, the man who had prided himself on being the immovable wall, was now immortalized as the victim of one of the greatest dunks in playoff history. And when Jordan wagged that finger, it was more than just a taunt. It was a reminder. Don't challenge the king unless you're ready to be humbled. The Bulls went on to close the series, then the Eastern Conference Finals, and finally claimed their 5th championship of the decade. Jordan added another Finals MVP to his resume, proving once again that he was in a league of his own. For the Hawks, that series was the beginning of a slow fade into irrelevance. They had the pieces, they had the defense, but against Jordan's Bulls, they were just another team in the way. Looking back, that dunk over Mutombo is remembered not just as a highlight, but as a cultural moment. It symbolized Jordan's ability to rise to any challenge, no matter the size, no matter the age. It closed the book on years of trash talk and speculation about whether Mutombo could stop him. He couldn't. Nobody could. And with that single leap, Jordan reminded the world why he was the GOAT. He wasn't just scoring titles and rings. He was moments. He was stories. He was the legend that turned even the toughest defenders into footnotes. And so the debate lives on among fans. Was that dunk over Mutombo the most disrespectful of Jordan's career? Some will argue it was the slam over Patrick Ewing in the Garden, where he twisted in midair and crushed New York's hope. Others point to the poster on Alonzo Mourning, another Georgetown giant who met the same fate. Or maybe it's a different memory for you, the dunk that made you jump off your couch and yell at the TV. Whatever your answer, the truth is, Jordan left a trail of victims, and each dunk carried a story. But Mutombo's? That one carried revenge. It was personal, it was emphatic, and it was unforgettable. When people talk about Michael Jordan, they mention the 6 rings, the scoring titles, the awards, and the records. But the reason his legend feels bigger than the numbers is because of nights like May 13, 1997. One challenge, one dunk, one finger wag that silenced any doubts. That's what made him different. For Jordan, every game was another chance to remind the world who he was and who everyone else wasn't. And Dikembe Mutombo, for all his greatness, was simply another example of what happened when you dared to poke the GOAT. And the legacy of that dunk didn't fade with time. Even years later, Mutombo himself would laugh about it in interviews, admitting that he never should have tempted fate. Fans still bring it up whenever his name is mentioned, proving that one single play can sometimes overshadow an entire career of dominance. That's the power of Jordan. He could turn a Hall of Famer, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, into a permanent part of his highlight reel with just one play. It wasn't disrespect for Mutombo's greatness, but rather a demonstration of Jordan's unmatched will to prove a point. For Jordan's teammates, that moment was also a spark. It wasn't just about Jordan scoring or dunking. It was about the statement it sent. When the best player in the world puts the league's best shot blocker on a poster, the entire team feeds off that energy. You could see it in the way the Bulls played after that dunk, with swagger, confidence, and pure joy. It was like they all knew they were witnessing history in real time, and they wanted to add to the show. Even the fans at the United Center understood the gravity of what they had just seen. They weren't just cheering another Jordan highlight. They were roaring because they knew this was one of those rare moments that would live forever. From the instant the ball slammed through the rim, the play was replayed in living rooms, on sports shows, and in playground conversations across the world. Kids went outside and tried to imitate the dunk, even wagging their fingers afterward. not realizing they were recreating one of the most cold-blooded gestures in basketball history. And in the grand picture of Jordan's career, that dunk was one more reminder of why his legend still grows long after he retired. Every time you think you've seen it all, every time you think he couldn't possibly add another story to the book, he did. That's why, decades later, we're still talking about it. That's why the dunk over Mutombo isn't just remembered as a play, but as a defining moment in the mythology of Michael Jordan.